Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly panel. Today's panel is Working in Film and Television, A Woman's Perspective. My name's Irina, and I'm the Director of Generations in Film. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. We have an amazing lineup of women tonight working in different areas of film and the TV industry, and it is a pleasure to have you join us. I do want to note that tonight's event is being recorded to be featured on our website later on, as well as our YouTube channel, where you could view it if you aren't able to finish the whole panel with us today. As well, if you have any questions for our attendees, you can ask them in the Q&A chat box, and you can also use a general chat to interact with fellow attendees. And while we're on the chat topic, I do want to know where you guys are tuning in from. So feel free to write down your city, country, or province, wherever you're from. I'd love to know. And the panelists as well would love to know where you guys are coming from. If you like to join, if you like to use the closed captioning option, you can also turn it on the bottom right-hand corner. And today's event is being sponsored by the CFE and Village Juicery. And as well, more details are to come about the giveaway at the end of our event. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight. Marriska Fernandes is an entertainment journalist, film critic, and reporter at Tribute.ca, and the host of Telefilm Canada's new podcast, Maple Popcorn. Marriska, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Irina. Awesome. There we go. So first of all, it's my pleasure to be here in this room with these incredibly talented women who are making waves in the film and TV industry in Canada. It's not often that I walk into a room and it's filled with women, especially in this industry. So I'm excited for tonight's conversation. So let me introduce our panelists for today. We have Donna Croce, who made her directorial debut in the final Emmy-winning season of Schitt's Creek after 20 years as a script supervisor. Welcome, Donna. Lovely to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Carolyn Taylor is an award-winning writer, actor, artist, and comedian, best known as the co-creator, executive producer, and star of CBC and IFC's Baroness one sketch show. Lovely to have you here, Carolyn.
Hey, thanks, Marska.
Marsha Greene, she's the showrunner on the third season of the critically acclaimed Mary Kills People, and is now showrunner on CBC and BET's The Porter. Welcome, Marsha.
For having me.
Of course. Unfortunately, Christine Brown couldn't be here today due to scheduling conflicts, but we wish her all the best. And now I'm going to start. So we're going to start with some quick questions, just more like rapid fire, just to get to know you guys. You don't need to take too much time to think about it. We're just going to judge you.
Okay. Oak tree.
Okay. Just kidding.
Okay.
So we'll start with you, Carolyn.
What
was your first job in the film and TV industry?
In film and TV. Okay. Yeah. Okay. My first job, I think I was, I'm trying to think, probably about like 10 or 11, because I remember I had this angular haircut, short on one side and long on the other. And I had that in grade 5. And I was in an extra background performer in the Peanut Butter Solution, a really tripped out, bizarro film that should probably never have been made in Quebec, in Montreal. And I was background performer, and I was so excited to be part of it. So that was my first taste of the biz.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you, Marsha?
My first job was as a showrunner's assistant on a kids show, a kids show, and it was about it's called Winging It, and it was about like a young boy and his best friend is an angel who like tries to help him be cool. But it was really such a fun show because like all the different sets, it'd be like, you know, we're on a pirate ship and all of this crazy stuff. And it was a really good introduction to the writer's room. So
how did you land that as your first job in the industry?
Well, I had just graduated from, I went to Humber College. I did a 1-year postgrad in television writing and producing. And then after I was done, I made a list of everybody I even like vaguely knew in the industry and then asked them to meet me for a coffee. Oh, and I think maybe 3 people said yes. And then one of them met me and then said, okay, I'll like send your name to like, or you can email these people. And so one of them was the, she's the production manager maybe and for Temple Street. And I wrote and I said that I was like a graduate and that I would do anything, and I had a G license and a car. And so then they like,
right on. Well done.
Nicely done. That's good.
Like, what are my selling points? I can drive and I have a car. And I ran that car into the ground. I basically had to I couldn't drive it after that because I drove so much that year.
What about you, Donna? Your first job in the industry?
My first job in the industry was actually, it was before I even became a script supervisor. I had just kind of retired from dancing because I used to be a dancer before I got into this industry. And I was a background performer on a show, and really wanted to sort of get in, and the AD who was taking care of all of us on our side of the set, and it was in Montreal, I will say, and everyone was in parkas, and we had to wear shorts and t-shirts because it was summer, but it was like really cold. Anyway, and it was just the entire crew were men, and the only woman on the crew that I could see when I was there was the script supervisor. And I had asked the AD, and I said, what about her job? What does she do? And so he kind of explained what she did. And I asked him to introduce me to the producers. I said, and then when I met them, I basically said, I'll work for free if you train me. And they did. They did. They hired me and I worked for almost a year for this production company, and these producers were great. It was like they put me on a movie of the week, and then a kids TV series that was in French, and then a feature film. And that took a year, which I did for free. And then they gave me my first job, my first real script supervising job on a movie of the week.
Fantastic.
That's amazing. I too started in the industry too, just doing free internships just to gather that experience. But would you recommend that though? Is that something you're proud about of how you started?
I think for me, first of all, because I started like so many years ago, I didn't even, and when I came from the dancing world, and I just was kind of like, I needed to find my place, because I just, and I have zero regrets about working for free. I mean, it was really hard, when people would get their paychecks and you're standing, in the middle of a quarry in the winter and it's freezing and you're doing this for free. That was hard to sort of, digest once in a while, but I have zero regrets, because I wanted to be there. Like I really wanted to be there. It was like, I wanted to learn. I followed everybody around, and, I thankfully had some script supervisors who were, one in particular who was incredibly generous with her knowledge and training me. So yeah, I was really lucky.
I have to say, yes, it's always, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Marsha.
I wanted to ask, this is it's not like a first job question, but along those lines, like when was the first time you were like, I want to direct, from when you were a script supervisor?
Oh boy. It happened really early on in my career. But I just, to be honest, I didn't have the confidence to even admit it to myself, because some people know this, some people don't. I used to be a ballerina, and when I had a career-ending injury, and so that injury, I felt like I just lost my voice. I really did. And so I was I was watching directors, and I would find myself in my head blocking the scene, or when I would time it in prep, I would see the scene. And so when I'd get to set, it was always kind of like, I'd be curious to see if the director would do something similar, or, how they would block scenes and stuff. And then after a while, it just became, I have to do this. Like, I cannot, I have to do this. And so that's when I really was like, okay, here we go. And it was, it was a scary thing to do after, a full career as a ballerina and then a full career as a script supervisor, to now say, I'm going to try something totally different that's impossible to break into. But I was really lucky. I was very lucky.
You did, and you did very successfully as well. You broke into the industry, I have to say. So what is it that you love about your job, and what is the one thing that you hate? But hate being too strong a word, so I'd probably just say the highs and lows, something that you're not too crazy about and something that you love. We'll start with you, Carolyn.
Oh, back to me. Okay. I can't believe I referenced my first job as a 10-year-old. Okay, but I hope you all learned some deep information from that
We did.
story I shared. So, sorry, what was the question? Highs and lows, best favorite part, least favorite part?
Yeah, what do you love about your job?
Well, I think for me, my job is so varied. I have so many different jobs. And I think that's something I absolutely love because my brain is constantly engaged. So whether I'm show running, and that takes, you know, Marsha, as you know, like a ridiculous amount of brain power and sort of a really diverse thought processes and creativity, but then also rigor and just, oh, geez, it's a lot. And then, so what I love the diversity within which I get to work. I love acting. I love inhabiting a role, but I also love creating. So I guess I love all the things. I do love all the things, but I wouldn't want to do just one of them. So that would be the downfall. That would be the thing. If I were just acting, and I have so much respect for people who what they do is act, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in awe. But for me, I do like to dip my toe in a lot of areas to stay engaged in the process. And I can be a bit controlling that way. I'm like, oh, I want to write it. No, but then now I want to edit it. Oh, I want to, you know, just probably a downside about me, and maybe a nice side too. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does.
Okay.
It's you enjoy them wearing different hats and doing everything on, you know.
Yeah, but that can also be exhausting, and it's just like, oh, that's the worst part. You're like, can I just do one thing? I was acting on something recently, and that was so exciting, and I kept wanting to fix it. Like, we were on set, and the background performers were cold, and they were off somewhere, and I was like, oh, we've got to go get them a proper tent, and where's the heater? And my co-star, she was like, not your job. You don't have to worry about that. I'm like, oh. Okay, like I'm used to wanting to, well, wait, we don't have a proper mark down here. Let's get it. Like just this ridiculous sort of attention to detail that you kind of have to have when you're involved in all aspects. So I think that's a really fun part, but letting go of that, I found really challenging.
Marsha?
I think that's actually true. That's very true. But like after I'd done Mary, after I was the showrunner on Mary, I don't know what I was doing after that. I can't quite remember. But then basically I worked on Coroner before I started doing The Porter. And it was like this, in a way, it was like this dream, you know, because it's like, you're not the showrunner. So it's like everything. It's like you're just in there, and it's like, what do you want? You want more ideas?
Yeah.
You want me to rewrite this? Like, keep doing it. Like it's so chill compared to being a showrunner. I'm like, this is a dream. Like it is a dream, because the truth is, it's so funny that I feel like this is kind of touching on something that is another question, but it's like, to be a showrunner, it is the goal for so many writers, and it is an incredible experience to get to have your hand in all of these different parts of the creative process to realize your show. But you know, when you get into it to be a writer, and I think what I love about being a writer is it's kind of like, you know, you love writing and creating and the kind of magic of that. But when you're a showrunner, that's really only 50% of your job, like, if you're lucky, and your actual job involves a lot of other things that are not always the most creative. So it's like, it's just nice to have that break when I just go and work on a show, and I just like, all I'm there to do is to write, to come up with ideas, to do all of that kind of fun stuff. But you always then, as I think Carolyn was saying, you get antsy, because then you're like, I would do, I would be like doing this, and this, and then you're like, oh, okay, yes, I need to like go and do this again. But I would say in the process of my job, the thing I love, I think what is the hardest part of the process is prep. Because before prep, when you're writing, it's like all the dreams in the world, you know, like what can it be? And then prep is the reality. It's the hard reality of like the show you're making and the amount of money you have and whatever. And then you go to set and it becomes alive again in a different way, because there's cameras and there's actors and whatever. And you get, I think, all of that kind of wonder back. But prep is definitely the hardest part of the job, because you're like, so many hard decisions.
What about you, Donna?
I really, really, really enjoy being on set with the actors and sort of creating the scene and blocking the scene. And it was really funny because on my very first day on directing on Schitt's Creek, and I'd been the script supervisor since day one, season 1, day 1.
Wow.
And I was standing there, and Dan Levy, just gave me a huge break, and he believed in me and gave me an episode. And I remember standing there, and, as a crew member, you're standing back and you're like waiting for the director. It's like, all right, do your thing. Right. And I was standing there looking at the entire crew and my cast. And it was like kind of slow-mo of like, oh, it's me. I have to talk now. Like I'm directing, so it was like a moment, and I'm sure it was like a nanosecond, but in my head, it felt really like that. But it's so much fun. And it's very, I come from a performance background. So it's like, I feel like I have a little bit of kinship with the actors because I understand what it's like to perform. I understand what it's like to put yourself out there. And what I don't like about directing is, you're protected from things, from knowing too much, right? Like as a script supervisor, I knew everything that was going on, right? Because you're at the village, what's happening. If there's a delay in the trailer, but as a director, they don't want to like bother you with like details. Meanwhile, it's like, no, I need to know, because if I'm going to be late, then I can make a plan B. You know what I mean? It's like you can, if you foresee, getting in trouble or whatever, you can start planning. So that's the one part that is kind of like a weird adjustment. Whereas before I sort of kind of knew everything that was going on, and now, you're in, but it's different, it's like, you have to worry about every little detail. So anyway, it's fun. It's a great job. It's a great job. I love my job.
And one thing I noticed when you're all talking about what you love about your job, your eyes just light up just talking about what you enjoy, your passion. If you notice that there's little things that you do, and I'm like, oh, you can tell that you really, really love your job. And I'm sure everyone who's listening now is so fascinated by how you followed your passion. It was not, I know it was not an easy path to take, your career trajectory, your journey. So Carolyn, probably, how did you end up where you are today, career-wise? Like, what was that path to lead you to where you are today?
I think there were a few key moments. So maybe I'll just hit on those key moments. First was in university. I was at Queen's. I wanted to be a lawyer. I was taking, political studies, philosophy. I got into the big drama production, the play, and the director was some director who'd come in from out of town, meant a lot. And he's like, you've got something, kid. And I was like, and I called him, Mom, I'm going to be an actor. And she's like, you're supposed to be a lawyer. And so I was like, well, I can do both. So I kept doing political studies and then added in theater drama. So those two things ended up really informing a lot of my career. So I'd say that was a key moment of taking that brave step and leaving one path and following another. The next would be, I was working an office job selling TV airtime, because I moved to Toronto and I thought that's in TV. Meanwhile, it's nothing, it's sales, it's nothing, but you're selling like spots for Veronica's Closet or whatever was on when I was doing that. And at the same time, I was taking classes at Second City. So I was taking the classes after work and whatever. And then I auditioned for the touring company. And that was around the same time that I got promoted. On the very same day I got promoted, where you go from being an assistant faxing stuff and whatever to getting an office expense account, like crossing over to the other side, to the good side with the money and the fun, amazing perks. That's way easier somehow. That's how it seems to work sometimes. So I got that job the same day I got the touring company, and it was like, holy shit. So I balanced both. Like I would work all day, do, took my vacation, did rehearsals for Tourco at Second City. And then eventually I ran out of days off at my office job. And my boss said, look, we're grooming you to be a sales rep in in this company. So you have to make a choice. And at that point, Tourco meant one gig a week, like $85 a Sunday night show. And then maybe other gigs if you got them out of town, but like $85 a show, right? And it was the easiest decision of my life. I was like, okay. And I resigned from the job, and I liked the job. I liked the people. I'm still friends with the people I worked with for that day. But it was like, I handed it in and people were like, you're so brave. Like, how did you do that? It's like, no, when you clearly know what you love, it's not bravery. Actually, it wasn't scary at all. It was life-changing. So that, I'd say, was another key moment. Then being at Second City, learning how to write social satire, which I love, that's my passion. And then learning how to write behind the scenes on 22 Minutes taught me about that, and watching the showrunner there and that kind of thing. And then of course Baroness was like a synthesis of everything, kind of all the pieces. So long answer, but anyway, lots of key moments that led to it.
Nice.
And perseverance, sticking with it.
Yes, that's the key, isn't it? That's something that everyone has often said that. What about you, Marsha?
I feel like key moments is a good way. I feel like there was kind of this one big key moment. So I had worked in marketing and advertising for about 10 years, I think. And I was doing all this other stuff. I was like working in the day, I was writing. I knew that I wanted to write. And so I was writing, I was freelance, doing like freelance writing for like magazines in the night. I was running, I was doing like a showcase an all-female musical showcase once a year. So I would be coordinating that half the year. So I was like doing all of this stuff. And then I was just like, okay, like I need to stop and like regroup and figure out, like, I'm like, why am I doing all of these things? Like, what is it? And so then, and I just was like, okay, like just stopped and thought. And like, when I was younger, I was like a real book reader. And so, but in the years kind of leading up to this moment, I had become like obsessed with television. And like at that moment, I was just like, I wonder if I should like try writing for television. Like, why have I never thought of this? I love it so much. It's like all like, whatever. And so I started to like read about it and whatever. And that was kind of like the beginning. And it was like, I mean, of course I had this moment because at the time I had a good job, and a job that I had worked quite hard for, like I'd spent all those years doing the other jobs to get to be like, a senior project manager for this company and whatever. So I'd worked a long time to get there. And I was like, oh God, I want to like start from like ground zero. But I just knew that I knew I would always wonder. I would always wonder about it. If I was like, it's not like, I remember my partner at the time was kind of like, it sounds so terrible. I should never tell this story.
Tell
it.
It's terrible because I feel like it sounds worse than what it was. But anyways, he was like, there comes a point when you have to like give up your dreams. But I think he just meant like when you're hanging on to something and it's time to like, anyways, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to editorialize for him. The point is that I felt like I understood what he was saying, but I felt like I'd never really given my real dream a shot. That I always like having the job and then writing on the side and then doing the other little things. And I was like, if I went for it like 100%, I think I might get to the point where I'd be like, you know what, it's not working out, and I could like comfortably do something else. But I didn't feel like I was at that point. I felt like I was at the beginning of like, I need to really try and really make this my life and see what could happen. And so I would say that was like the big turning point. And so I wasn't living in Toronto at the time. So I moved back to Toronto, went to Humber, which was a 1-year post-grad, and then worked in production for 4 years. Then I went to the Canadian Film Centre for the TV writing program. And then after about a year, I got the job on Private Eyes. As I was just saying, I was like, Donna was the script supervisor on Private Eyes, which was the first episode of television I ever wrote. And then from that time on, I've only ever been a television writer.
Interesting. That's very
You guys
interesting.
have such inspiring stories. It was like,
Donna,
what
was your path that led you here?
My path was really, certainly not as impressive as that. It's really funny because I have moments of, when I first started and I was a trainee as a script supervisor to be a script supervisor. On the last project that I did, it was this sci-fi, it was in the winter, it was a sci-fi movie, and we were shooting in a Lafarge quarry, and it was going to end in December, and I had my last sort of final performance because I had a career-ending injury, but I really wanted to like leave on my terms. So I was still trained. So I was like during the day on set outside in this insane cold. And at night I'd be in my hotel room in a shower with a glass of wine out of the shower and sobbing because I'd be so cold, and I'd be like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then I would like warm up, and then I would do the bar in my hotel room, because when that show wrapped, I had to perform. I had 2 weeks and I had a gala performance to do, and that was it. That was going to be the end of my dancing career. And so it was really weird because I'd be, literally every night in the shower. This was my routine. And I would just sob and think, what am I doing? Like, I was a ballerina and now I'm, in these like big parkas in the cold, and like, this is insanity.
Sorry, was it the bar in the shower? You did your leg thing in the bar?
No. I drank in the shower.
And then you did a bar. Okay, I just was like, oh my God.
No.
Okay.
Then I would, against the dresser, do my plies and do everything because I needed to be in shape. Yeah.
Great.
But I never wanted to sort of quit. Like, it was really weird. It was like, I need to get through this. And then when I was done that show, that production company gave me my first job, and it was like, it was the most thrilling thing for me, because I thought, oh my God, I made it through. I made it through a year of this training. And, and I didn't go to film school. I didn't, grow up thinking I want to make movies, like none of that, I literally fell into it accidentally. And I was just or there were no accidents, but I really sort of felt like I like it here. I'm good here, as crazy as the industry is and as difficult as it can be sometimes, as we all know. It felt right. I felt like, okay, I can live here. I can live in this world, So I think it was during that last training film that I did, that was really kind of trainee time, that was really like, I thought, if I am standing in a shower, drinking wine and crying, I'm sticking with this and following it through.
When did you decide to make that switch? Because you were, for 20 years, you were the script supervisor for Schitt's Creek, and then you became the director. So when did that switch happen? Was it a conscious decision or an opportunity?
Yeah, it was a conscious choice. I a few years earlier had started thinking, I really want to direct, and I think I could do this. But again, like, I don't mean to keep harping on it, but like, when my injury so just shook everything in my world, like it really did, mentally as well. And I just felt like, I can't do this yet. I don't know enough yet. I need to learn more. There's no way I can make this jump. And then around season 3 of Schitt's Creek, I started sort of harassing Dan and, talking about directing. And I was starting to look for like little shorts to do and whatever. But at the same time, you got to live and pay bills and whatever. So it was kind of like a parallel kind of thing. And then finally in season 5, at the end of season 5, Dan told me that he was giving me an episode for season 6. And I was just, and I didn't tell a soul until I had like signed my contract and was like starting prep, because it was like, I don't want to be like, I'm directing an episode of Schitt's Creek and then it goes away, right? Because we all know it's until you're standing on set and call action, it's not happening, right? Yeah.
It's very interesting, all these stories that you have mentioned of what it took to get you where you are here today. But like you said, the industry is very difficult. It doesn't let you thrive very easily. The actors and filmmakers that I've had the opportunity to talk to, and they've often said that you can't let it bring you down. You've got to work at it and be determined, because there are many, many rejections. So whether you're a filmmaker trying to get your movie funded, whether you're an actor trying to get auditions, or even if you're trying to pitch a show to a network, which you've all been doing successfully. So I want to know, what were some of the roadblocks that you faced when you were starting out? Or even now, something that you still face, the roadblocks, the pits in your career?
Who are you asking? Are you asking me?
Anyone who wants to jump in, otherwise I'll pick on you.
Somebody else talk. I'm talking a lot.
Okay, Marsha.
I went on so many job interviews before I like to be a writer, before I got Private Eyes, and I remember like always being like it's like they would go well, but I would never get the job. And I realized, okay, like they would go well because it's like, I mean, it's a conversation. So you go and you have a conversation and, and it's nice and whatever. Like, I don't actually, like, looking back now, I'm like, I'm not sure they were the right shows for me anyways, but I was like trying to convince these people they were all the right shows for me. So whatever. And then at some point I like talked to my agent and I was like, I don't understand. Like, I go on these interviews, they go well and I don't get the job. And I just feel like, can you like give me some pointers? Because I had an interview coming up for Kim's Convenience. And so she gives me some, and she's like, basically, she's like, it's like when you're talking, you need to like find a way to be like kind of also selling yourself. Like you're not just like talking, but you're also trying to sell. And I was like, got it. So anyway, so I go to this interview with Vince and Kevin, and I am like, basically, it's terrible because everything they say, all I'm trying to do is like think about how I can turn what I'm going to answer into. So it's like, how many, like, are you an only child? And I was like, oh, no, I'm actually one of 5. And that's why family is very important to me and why I would always like to work on a family show. Yeah. It was like that, like everything they said, I just wanted to turn it into, it's like, I have a story that could be a great episode one day. It was like terrible. And at one point, Ince said to me, like, he was like, oh, how do you know this actress, who was a mutual friend of ours? And I was like, oh, I actually wrote something for her. And it was really cool because it was like outside of my genre, but I really had a good time. And I think I'm like basically more known, or like I had a drama sample and this was a comedy. So then I like turn it into how I can write outside of my genre. And that was like the one moment really in the interview that afterwards I like knew it was a terrible interview because it was like, I didn't say like, how do you know her? Like the way any normal person would in a conversation. Like there was no conversation. It was just me being a robot. Anyways, and then after that, I just was like, that was bad. And I was just like, when it's the right fit, it's the right fit. And you won't have to, like, that. I really do think that's true. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, looking back, I think those other shows maybe weren't the right fit for me, actually, because the show I ended up working on, I actually did get a job before Private Eyes, I forgot. The show I ended up working on was actually a show that was like quite, like really, really so much like my actual life. And I had all kinds of stories to contribute to that show. And I left that job interview like knowing it was right and knowing that the other person felt that too. And I did get the job. So I think after that experience, it actually really helped me because then the jobs that I didn't get, I was just like, wasn't the right fit, wasn't the one for me. And then I would go on to the other one. And that's like not to say I didn't have like many moments of like despair and crying, but after like that, you give yourself that wallow day or whatever, and then you wake up the next day and you go back at it. That's the life, especially the life in this business when you're essentially a freelancer. You always have to look for another job, and so that's going to be part of it. So you start to build up a resilience, I think, or learn how to like get yourself out of that.
Did you ever feel
you can't like wallow in the rejection because the rejection happens all the time. And so, you just, you're not that person's cup of tea, but you're that person's shot of whiskey, so it's like not everybody is a good fit. And so, you just need to keep on keeping on because it'll destroy you.
It really will. It's funny, like before Baroness, like I'd been working on different shows like 22 Minutes and writing on different shows. And then I really reached a point where I'm like, I need to write in my own voice. And part of your skill, if you're watching this and you're starting out, part of the skill is learning to write in other people's voices. So important. Like, what is the show? You're not gonna, like, I tried to make 22 Minutes at first on my trial thing. I was like, I pitched a sketch? It was like disparate housewives. It's like, no, they're not gonna do that. That wasn't, and then this voice came to me. I know this sounds crazy, but when I was really struggling trying to get something on the show, and it just said, this is gonna make me sound like a total flake, but whatever, it happened. A voice came down and said, yield to it and it'll yield to you, the show. Like, go with what the show is. Stop trying to be like, this is me and this is, because it's not working. And so I started to really watch, what is the show? How do I write in its voice? And then sure enough, I started getting stuff on, and I did a few seasons at 22, but then reached a point where I'm like, I'm tired of that now. Like, it's a skill you need and to learn, and I'm so grateful for that experience. But then when you choose to write in your own voice or create your own work, I went into, I don't know about the rest of you, but I went into a time of no work. Like, I could not get booked. I was like, this is horrible. I barely, like, I wasn't seeking. I went to my agent and I said, I don't want to work, and I want to do my own thing. And she's like, okay. And so it was like working on Baroness and working with Meredith McNeil. We'd met at 22 and like trying to get this show off the ground. And in the meantime, my bills, like, I've gone through my savings. I have no money. Like, I'm like, holy shit. And my girlfriend is also an artist. And she, we were talking, and I went for a job, what was it for? A prank reality show, like, just not my jam at all. But I was like, to Marsha's point, like, I was like, I got an interview, and I did it, and I didn't get the job. I couldn't believe it. And I was like, I don't even want this, but I think I want it. And I didn't get it. And my girlfriend, bless her, she was like, don't worry. Like, I'm actually happy you didn't get it, because this is not what you're going for. You're going for something else. And to have someone in your life, it doesn't have to be a partner, but someone who says, no, I'm happy you didn't get that job that wasn't right for you, that you were trying to fit into, that, I'm happy you're sticking with what you want to do. And she really supported me through those hard times. And I was about to give up on Baroness because everyone else had gotten a green light and we hadn't heard anything. And it was March 4th, I believe, year of the sheep, just after year of the horse. I don't know, whatever year that was. And I was like, oh my God, it's March 4th, the year of the horse passed. I didn't cross the finish line. We didn't get it. And I was like crying. I was like, oh no, and I was like, I have to do something else. I burned through everything. I have no money left. It's over. Like, I tried everything. I worked my hardest and we didn't get a green light. Cried. And then the phone rang, like the next morning, alternate phone rings. And it was like my producer, and he's like, guess what? They ordered 6 episodes. And I couldn't even get excited because I'd given up. I was like, I did my best and it's not possible. And I cannot follow this dream anymore. Like your partner, Marsha, that you're telling me, it's like time to give up the dream. Okay, it's time. I tried. No one's going to say I didn't try. And so I couldn't even get happy because I was emotionally spent. I was like, oh, okay. And then I went, the last bit of the story, not to monopolize this, but I went to buy a pair of jeans because I'd worn the same jeans for like 2 years and nothing. I was with my girlfriend and she covered the amount, and it was like my overdraft was like $1,500. I was at like $1,300. So I was in minus 30. I still had $200 left. And I just booked a voice gig and I was like, I did it, baby. Fucking did. It was like, it felt like I touched the bottom of the ocean almost. And then just before the end, or a plane going down, it's like, we're okay. We're back in the game. So anyway, it doesn't have to be that dramatic for all of you, but it was for me.
And that is your success story, because you went on to win 2 Canadian Screen Awards for Baroness after that. So that's pretty awesome that you've all had a point in your life when you felt you were going to quit and you've tried to come out of that. Did you have a moment like that, Donna, where you felt like you were about to quit?
Earlier today? No. Because the thing is, it's like you're always looking for the next one, right? And it's interesting because it's not easy, I'd love to be able to say offers are pouring in for jobs, and it's like, they're not. I have to struggle just like everybody else. And you do the meetings and you don't get the jobs, and you just have to keep trying. But I had a very similar thing as you, Carolyn, because I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not taking any more script supervising jobs. I'm making the jump because it's like, is she a director? Is she a script supervisor? So I wanted, because the people in the industry here, certainly here in the city, know me as a script supervisor. And so I was like, if I'm going to be taken seriously as a director, I really need to commit. And so I did. And it was like, you spend a lot of time unemployed, and same thing. It was like, oh, I'm going to borrow from this line of credit to pay that. And I can like shift there. And then you're like, I can eat ramen for one more day. You know what I mean? It's like, and everybody goes through it. And it's still hard. I'm still, although I've been in the business for a couple of decades, I'm a new director, right? So it's trying to prove to producers and showrunners that you know what you're doing, and you know, you have a voice, you have a vision, but you also, you know, can get your day on time. And you know what I mean? Because there's all those other things with directing. It's not just, you know, oh, I have a vision. It's like, you know, shit happens on the daily, things that go wrong, and you need to be able to like flip and make it work and figure it out. And when I was gonna start, I'm working on Lock and Key right now, and before I was gonna start on Lock and Key, I was really nervous and thought, you know, who am I kidding? What am I doing? Like, who am I kidding? And a friend of mine said, you know, you don't know how much you know until you know how much you know. Like, you're going to be on set, and that's when you're going to realize, oh, I actually do know, because you're going to encounter situations that you're going to have problems that you're going to have to solve. And it's like, that's when your experience will come in, which has happened to me. Like, every time I'm on set shooting, it's my career as a script supervisor has so prepared me well for it. You know, it was the perfect job, because you're there when the cameras are rolling, you're there, the actors trust you, because really you're the word police as a script supervisor. And Marsha. And so, yeah, it was, yeah.
I think it's so. I just have to say, I was just saying yesterday, or the day before, I was like, I was in a town hall, and we were talking about junior writers, and I was like, for the record, when I was a junior writer, I had been a professional writer for 15 years. Like, I had already been writing for so long, but it was like I hadn't written in TV, and therefore I was a junior. I'm like, we were kind of talking about like taking a chance, because of course it is. Someone has to give you an opportunity, but so often the people are coming in with so much experience, like other experience that really is transferable. Like, when I was saying all the different things I was doing, what I realized, because I had done all this event management, it was like I understood about how to be a coordinator, how to take all those pieces and talk to all these people and make something, plan something until the day you're watching it. It's like planning a shoot, so I was able, I think part of the reason why I was able to succeed when I finally did get in was because I was bringing all this experience in. And for me, I've always felt that I'm kind of grateful that it took me so long to figure it out, because I feel like I was more successful at this age, like now doing it, than I might have been when I was 20, because I was like, I don't know. I just didn't know. I think I would have been more held back by the things I didn't know. Whereas, as Donna said, like now you are a little bit more like, I know a lot of things, and I'll figure it out when I get there. I'll pretend I know a lot of things.
But you know what? The other thing too that I find, I guess, with the experience that I have, is I'm also not afraid to say when I don't know. You know, I'm not afraid to say, I don't know, because it happens, and you don't know everything, and things do come up, and I worked on a movie once, and on Away From Her with Sarah Polley, and that was her directorial debut, and she was, I learned so much from her. And at one point we were talking, and how she was interacting with the crew and whatever, and she said, I'm the rookie on this set. She said, I'm the director, but I'm the rookie. And she said, I would be a fool not to let people, do their thing. And that's what you have to do as well. You need to allow people the space to bring what they bring to the table, and give them the space to, be artists, creators, grips, electrics, whatever, anything. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a story.
I have to tell you a hilarious story. I was on set the other day with one of our directors, RT, and we blocked the scene, and then people were off doing their things. And so we were standing at the table, and in the scene there was, they had been playing cards. So there was like a few cards like left out on the table. And I was like, okay, RT, I was like, we're both gonna flip over a card. And if my card's higher, then I'm gonna direct the scene. And if your card's higher, then you're gonna direct it. And he goes, okay. And so I flip my card over and it's a 9, and he flips his card over and it's a 10. And I'm like, and then afterwards I was like, oh my God, like what would I have done? If I cannot explain to you. But then I was like, you know what I would have done? I would have been like, okay, show me how to direct the scene. You know, like it's like I was like, maybe the worst thing that happened was that I lost, because at least I would have just had to go for it, you know? And it's just funny. It's true. Like I think in a way, like even doing that and like kind of running the risk is something I would not have done like many years ago. And now I'm like, well, what's the worst that could happen? There are so many people around who are like not going to let this be a terrible scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Your success stories are so inspiring. So for our audience who's watching, they're definitely in awe of what you do and would like to do or be in your position or your role someday, and they don't know where to start. Like, what would you suggest? What is your key advice?
You mean for people to direct or showrun or act or just anything to get in the industry?
It could be any of the things that you're working on. So it could be a showrunner, it could be a director, it could be a filmmaker. Yeah, even writing.
Oh God. Oh my God. Oh gosh, what do you say? Like, there's follow your passion. No,
oh, Carolyn, don't be silly.
Advice.
So perhaps something like, do they need formal schooling? Do they actually, so someone who's not had that professional background, does this mean it's a no? Like, what would you suggest? Volunteering on productions? Is that some?
I would say know yourself. Know yourself. If you're someone who needs structure in order to learn, you're like, I'm not going to do anything unless I have someone telling me to do it and having assignments and whatever. You go to school for it. If you're someone who really who's not necessarily easy making friends and you could make them at class and develop friendships and relationships over time, go to school. If you're someone who's like, fuck, I can learn that shit. I'm gonna fast track, cut corners, move and shake, be that person. And, or I love, Donna, what you did of like, I'll work free. You know, if you have the confidence or the bravery or whatever to do that and the resources
or
to be able to, or whatever, yeah, or whatever. Yeah. But like, if you have that, then know who you are and where you know, what your strengths are, and not just your strength within the industry, but like your strength as a person. Do you have a high risk? Are you okay not knowing where your next paycheck is? Or do you really need to have something? In which case I'd say work your day job and do the other thing on the side until you start, you know, does that make sense? Like,
no, that's exactly what I give advice to people as well, is if they don't have a full-time job. If they have a full-time job, but they cannot get into what they want, do it on the side until they get that experience, right? Marsha, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, I know, like for me, I feel like networking has been such an important part of my career and how I got my first job and all of those things. But I just also recognize, like, you know, I love people. I love being around people. I'm very social. And so it isn't like a huge challenge for me to be like, oh, I'm going to go out, or I'm going to like talk to 3 people at this party. Like, and I get that that's not everybody. So, I mean, for the people who are like that, I just think that Carolyn's advice to like know yourself is really important, because if you're that kind of person, it's amazing. Like, I could just email 10 people I barely knew and was like, hey, would you go for a coffee? And know I could sit across from them at a coffee shop and have something to say. Like, that kind of thing like doesn't intimidate me. But I shouldn't say doesn't intimidate me. I was nervous, but I was like, well, the worst that's going to happen is that they'll just say no. And then the next time I see them, I'll just pretend like it's cool.
Yeah.
And then it'll be cool. You know, like, people like take their cues from you. If you act like it's not a big deal, then it won't be a big deal. That's how you gotta roll. But for other people, like, I have other friends who are maybe not as social. And so then it's like, in that case, I'm like, you know, the work will be the calling card. So it's like, write the script, get find like a group of other people to read the work and give you notes, and keep doing it. Do not send out your first draft. It's probably not good enough. I'm sorry. It has all the raw potential to be the greatest thing, but it probably isn't. It's like, you know, you have to, like, I think you have to find your ways, right? Because it's like, it's not, and even like getting an agent, like an agent can only do so much for you. Your agent is so helpful. I think as a writer, your agent is so helpful for you once you have a job. And before you have a job, it's not like they're not helpful for you, but it really is like people need to know you and they need to know your work, and there are all kinds of ways to get it out there. And I think if you know what you feel comfortable with, you can start looking at those other, you can go to school, so you'll make connections. You can go to panels. You can go to events, you can grab a friend to go to an event with you, so you don't have to go alone. Like there's so many things. And I think it's really important to get yourself and your voice out there somehow.
And honestly, it's even just one, even if it's just one person that you know, or one connection that you make. I mean, I started out in Montreal, and then I moved to Toronto, and I didn't know anybody in the city. And I was a new script supervisor. I'd only been doing it for a year, and I moved to, Toronto, and I had a friend in Montreal, and she said to me, she's like, "Oh my God, you're going to get eaten alive." And I thought, great, thanks for the support. But, it was like, I knew somebody here, and I said, I had given them my resume with like my one show, and was like, I just put the resume on the desk. That's all I want. I just want the introduction. And so I did, and I miraculously got that job, and it just led to the next, to the next, to the next. And I've been like incredibly fortunate in my career, in my script supervising career. After that one first sort of like push from somebody who like put my resume on a desk, it's the work. You got to do the work. You have to have the discipline, because it's not easy. Being on a film set all day is difficult, no matter what department you're in, no matter what job you are doing. It's a difficult life, but can be so amazing and rewarding and fun and insane. And, there was this, I was on a show once, and we were shooting on the Cherry Street Bridge. For people who don't know Toronto, there's this bridge in the city, and it was like 3 a.m, and it was just piss pouring rain sideways. And it was back in the day where it was like pen and paper, and I was like, had my little cover sitting on my little stool, and it was horrendous. And the executive producer was sitting next to me, squatting next to me in this storm. And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, I should have gone to law school," because that's what I wanted to do too, Carolyn. After I retired from dancing, I wanted to go to law school. I said, "Oh, I should have gone to law school." And he looked at me and said, "I went to law school." It was really funny, because he was like, "Oh, okay." And it doesn't make it so bad,
Yeah.
That is
like Marsha said, go to panels, go to universities and in the film department, and go look at the bulletin board. Are they shooting shorts? Do they need somebody? Like just do anything, and you will find your place. If you go in with what, like, I've had so many people come to me and say, "Oh, I'm really good with details. I think I'd be a really good script supervisor." And I've had people come to set and, want to train. And I actually had one person leave after lunch and said, "This is not for me." And, like, I get it,
Yeah.
So yeah, just do anything, try, just go for it. Go for it.
That's very interesting advice.
That's it. Really, it's so true.
Yeah.
If you can get one job, no matter what it can be, and you are good at your job and you work hard and you take it seriously, like it just means so much. Like whatever position you're in, and I don't know that. I think people really don't believe that, but it's really true. It's really true. Like you love all of the people who are there working hard with a smile on their face. Like it's the greatest thing in your day when you have whatever job you have, so.
Before, I'm sure there are going to be more follow-up questions before we open up the flow for a Q&A, but one question I had which was important to me and I wanted to ask you was, one of the things that I always try to champion is diversity and representation in the industry, whether it's in front of the camera, behind the camera, or even in the press room as a reporter. I remember when I was starting out, I was often the only woman of color in the room. Things are starting to shift now, but it feels like women are still far more prominent in below the line roles, like a coordinator or an assistant. So do you feel like women have to work harder for creative and executive roles? Did you experience that sort of that shift in the industry before when you were starting out as a showrunner? And do you think there's a change right now? Is it moving in a different direction? What was your experience in that sense? We'll start with who do anyone wants to volunteer, or should I just pick on you?
We're all
Okay.
like,
I think, I mean, yeah, it's changed so much. Like when I was first writing for TV, I'd often be the only woman in the room, or there'd be one other woman, you know. And at that point, my experience, I don't remember any women of color at that time. Like it was the rooms were very white and very male. And that's just what it was. And as a gay, as a queer, I didn't see any other queer women. Like there was just, you know, lack of, cultural diversity for sure. That was my experience at the time. And what I realized was often people who hire who they know, who they're friends with, who they like, who reminds them of them, who, you know, so you start. And I remember working in this room that was all guys. And one of the guys said to me, you know, oh, I was just in for a couple of weeks in this room. And he's like, you know, you fit in so well. Like you do such a, you know, you're so easy to be around. And in my mind, I was like, do you know how much work goes into just fitting in and not like being one of the guys and not bringing my true self to the table? That's most of my job is actually just doing that, worrying about that before I'm even writing. And so with Baroness, what was so refreshing was, oh my gosh, like when bringing a story to the table and an idea, having it reflected back. I mean, all very different people in the room, you know, shifted for me. Having other queer people around was like, so that was crucial to have in the room. And but just that your time isn't spent fitting in as much as it is like actually doing the work, if that makes sense. But it was a long journey. I think things have changed a lot since then, but not enough, not nearly enough. But again, I'm speaking from as a white queer woman, but that was my experience.
I think it's really true, and I think the statistics even show that when, for example, women are in power, they tend to hire other women, and so it really is just so crucial for us to be doing that work, because I think, I mean, maybe there is just an element of human nature, you know, that you hire people, you know, but when when there's always the same people in power, then that's how we end up where we are. And you know, just to what Carolyn was saying, I remember when we did Porter, what I call this is like the Porter 2.0. So what I'm in now is kind of like 3.0, I guess. But anyways, there was another Porter development room, I think in 2018 maybe, that it was in, and it was the first room I'd ever been in with other Black people. And what I had not realized before, but realized in that room, was that I like told a story, and then I realized I would have never told that story in any of the other rooms I had been in. But I didn't consciously know in the other rooms I was doing. Like I went to every room. I loved the people that I was with. I worked really hard, but I was just like, oh, I think there is like a part that I'm maybe not accessing, but not even consciously, just because I've spent a lifetime of going into these spaces and being like, you have to fit in and you have to, you know, whatever. And so anyways, I just find, I'm like, and then I went in that room and I was like, oh, and also, I mean, the stories were about Black characters. So I was also accessing that, being like, oh, here's something, like, I guess it's like, you know, like code switching didn't come up before I was in that room or whatever. And so anyways, it's just, I guess that maybe is not answering your question, but I think it's like, I think why it's so important to have this kind of representation in rooms is they actually feel like you're getting from the writers, like all kinds of different stories that they're like tapping into when they're in a space where they feel seen or reflected or comfortable or whatever, and maybe in ways that they themselves don't even realize. And I do feel like the challenge for us now, we've done such a good job of like getting people in like kind of at a certain level. And for writers as well, you know, there's a lot of writers of color who are kind of, you know, script coordinators or junior story editors or like we're kind of here, but we really need to be bringing people up to showrunner level. We really need executives of color, and we really need that, I think, to start to see the kind of widespread change that we really want to in the industry.
Nice. I'm going to open the flow to some interesting questions that have been coming in. First, this is an interesting one. I'll start with this. Have you ever been fired, and how have you handled that?
Nope.
I was fired from an apple picking job in New Zealand. But,
How did you get fired from an apple picking job?
I kept saying, wait, these conditions don't seem right. And the owner was like, you're fine, get out of here. I was like, oh, okay.
So what would be the benefits of going back to school, like the Humber postgrad, if you're making a career switch? Is it necessary? And if not, what is your advice on how we can get our first gig to get the experience everyone is looking for, especially if we can't afford to do free work?
I mean, if you can afford to go to school, and again, you respond well to school and you're going to maximize that opportunity because it's a lot of money and time, go to school and learn the thing. But if not, like I would say, can you write a short? Can you write a sketch for, you know, I was doing that. So I was writing sketches and putting them up on little stages and stuff. Can you create a short film, you know, and get people together, and then you've got something to show people. Like you need to have, I guess, something to show. So you can either generate that work in school because you'll have assignments that'll ask you to do things like that, or just create your own work and team up. I think Marsha was saying that, or maybe it was not about, find someone like-minded or with a complementary skill set. You don't have to be the same. You're like, oh, I'm good at this and I'm good at that. Well, that's perfect. That's what you want, you know? And then if you could find that third person and you work really well, then you've got yourself the beginnings of a project. So I would say that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that school is, I was really like, I have no idea. And I was like getting all the books out of the library. Like I was like going to school. I was like, I didn't feel myself that I could just go in there. It just I felt like I needed those things. And truthfully, those contacts were useful to me, but it is like, you know, when I went to the CFC, even like my sister supported me at the CFC because I couldn't work and she was working. She was on mat leave and she went back to work from her mat leave early for me to be able, because I had been like, funnily enough, we were living together. I was working while she was on mat leave. So then I was paying the bills, and then I got into the CFC and I was like, I have to go. And so then she was like, okay, I'll go back to work. And she went back to work and I went to school. So yeah, it's like when you have someone like who's like, okay, I got you. Like it's amazing to do that, and I really needed it. But truly, for the people who don't, I would just say, like, you might not be able to like not work for a long amount of time, but if you could look for even an opportunity to volunteer for like a short, or volunteer for something for like a weekend even, or like, you know, you might meet somebody on that short and then they might go to a job and be like, oh, I'm looking for a PA. I worked with that, like, oh, there's that volunteer who was so great. And then you could get a job from that. So even if you can find like smaller, like volunteer opportunities or intern opportunities, every job you go to, you just want to do your best and like maximize the contacts you could make at that job, because you truly do not know where those people could like end up. And people love recommending, like, I know someone great. Like, and then you come in and you're great, and then they're like, you were right. And they're like,
and if you're great, people are going to want to work with you. Like if you're, you know, starting out as a PA and you're on time, you do the thing, you have foresight, you know, you don't escalate problems, you make them go away, you know, like people are going to want to recommend you, like Marsha's saying, and, you know, like they're going to want to work with you.
Yeah. And you know, like when I that production company who gave me my first job after working, them not paying, actually I should clarify, because I was on workman's comp and I had managed to like arrange something with workman's comp to be on set. So I was making $160 a week, which is insane. Oh my God, I totally lost my train of thought. It's your work and your work ethic and stuff. And so when I got that first job, I made this huge screen direction mistake at a door, and I was mortified. And I went to the producers and I was like, it's okay, you can fire me. Like I screwed up so big. And they just stood there and laughed and were like, can you just get back to work, please? Like, you know, and I was just, you know, like I was sick to my stomach because I had made this mistake, and it was just kind of like, you know, I was just beside myself and just thought, you know, I'm going to nip it in the bud. I'm going to like beat them to it. I'm going to go and give them the permission to fire me, you know, and they literally laughed and were like, get back to work, you know. And I am, as you guys are for sure, like just I'm somebody who works hard and I will give my all. And, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall, but you know, you just keep at it. Don't let it get you down, because you will get down, trust me.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more rejections.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Bella Caballero says, how was the learning curve in regards to the non-creative aspects of your job, budgeting, permits, etc.? Did you have imposter syndrome when you were starting out, and did it ever go away?
I feel like the learning curve is like huge. I would say just from being a writer to being a showrunner, there's like this thing where it's like, okay, for example, most writers are never in post. Like when you write on a show, you don't go to post. It's like you write on the show and then you're done. And then you're a showrunner and it's like, now you're in charge of it. It's like, so, I mean, that first job I ever had when I was the showrunner's assistant, I asked him if I could go sit with him in post. And then I did that on my next job. And then I went and worked on Mary Kills People. Like I sat in on post every year of that show too. So like I asked, and if you ask the showrunner, like will most of the time say yes. And so, but it's like, that's like a good thing to do, because then, yeah, like, but I'd never been to like a color correct. I'd never been to like the music, and it's like, oh, it's like, yeah, that, you know, that those footsteps do sound too loud. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And I mean, I was really, really fortunate, because the first show that I was showrunning with Tassie Cameron, who had so much experience. And I really knew I had someone who like knew what they were doing. So I was not really, and also the show was in its last season and we knew that going in. So I was like, I basically can't fail. It's not like the show's going to end because of me.
Yeah.
Like this is like the dream scenario to like learn how to do this job. But even, yeah, like even now I was like on this show, it was like, we have a lot of VFX because we're doing a period show. So now I'm like in these, it's like, oh my God, it's like a whole other world. I don't know anything about this. I just have like never dealt with it before. So, but to be honest, it was like when I was first thinking about working in television, one of the things I really liked was that I could imagine that there was like a lifetime of things to learn. Like I could imagine that there was always going to be like another thing to achieve or another thing to learn. And I felt like that was good, because I felt like all the other jobs I had, it would be like after like 3 years, I would get bored. And I was like, I don't think I'll get bored. And not just because of the writing, but because of those other things that I don't understand. And I'm still learning even on this show. So yes, imposter syndrome, but I feel a little bit less now, like I have to pretend than I did before. Like I was just like, I don't understand. You
make a really good point, Marsha, about like asking other people as well, like that are not in your department. Like when I was a script supervisor, I had asked editors if I could go spend time in the editing room with them, because I knew it would make me better at my job, because I needed to know all this stuff. And it's serving me obviously as a director now to have spent so much time in the editing room. And really it's just getting over yourself and the fear of just asking, because what's the worst they can do is say no, and then you move on to the next person, and somebody will say yes at some point. Somebody will, you know. It's not always no. It's no a lot, but it's not always no. So.
And if you're constantly growing and pushing yourself, that imposter syndrome doesn't go away. It will rear its head. Like you might be like, oh, I got this, but then there's going to be some new aspect, or, you know, a new tier of show, or whatever, however you want to look at it, or a new responsibility. And so you have to kind of befriend it and move forward with it and be like, oh God, I gotta still carry this thing, and you figure it out. And yeah, it doesn't go
be
away.
Okay to live with fear.
Yeah.
Isn't it good? Like in a way, I always think about what I like about going from show to show is that I feel like, yeah, I never get too comfortable, because then I have to go to a new show where the people don't know me. So then, you know, and even now, once you're like, when you're a little bit well known, then you're going in with expectations.
Oh, yeah.
And I live up to those expectations. So you can't get comfortable. You can't be like, I'm going to phone it in today. It's like, I go to every job being like, I got to work so hard. I got to be so good at my job. I don't want people to be like, why is everybody saying that Marsha Greene's any good?
Yeah.
I think, If I go in there, like, I'm gonna be the best I've ever been, like, every time. I never get comfortable. Like, I never ever get comfortable because I know. And it's also like, yeah, I want people to be like, oh, she's great.
Yeah.
I want.
Kelly is asking, I'm trying to get my foot in the door in a writer's room, and I don't have many direct connections to the television shows in the industry. I have a good portfolio. What should be my next step?
There's a lot of sort of those meet and greet type situations, those setup meetings. Often there are things where it's like a more seasoned writer is teamed with someone who's less experienced or trying to break in. And I guess, do you guys have any names of those? I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I know I've been to them, been part of them, where you're paired with someone more junior.
Right. I was like, I thought the CB, I mean, it is I feel like getting into the writer's room is like, it's so hard. It's so hard because there's really very, very few internships, like definitely like research internships. If you can find anything that you can apply to, like Chorus used to have that program, that BAMP program, where then you would get like an internship. I feel like somebody else just had one. Oh, Real World has one.
Real World has one, yeah.
Just had one, like anything like that where you can get a placement, like that's amazing. Yeah, like meet and greets, like if you could like, because like producers from production companies can place people in rooms, or like, so sometimes when you have like the script coordinator or an assistant, it might be like the production company will say, oh, I know someone, whatever. So if you can like go to these meet and greets where you can meet like some producers or broadcasters or whatever to see your work, they might be willing to be like, oh yeah, you could go sit in this room. Sometimes they even like I mean, Donna could probably speak more to this, but sometimes like shadowing and things like that can happen just from like knowing, from getting on the broadcaster's radar or the producer's radar. I think I would just say that, yeah, like that's definitely one where you kind of need someone to make connections. So you need to like look for an opportunity, like literally any opportunity to meet somebody who could like get you in there. And
ask around the shows that do mentor people, because beyond internships, there's like, when my first writing gig for TV was 22 Minutes, and they had Mark Farrell was the showrunner there, and they really had a tradition of taking chances on like stand-ups and sketch comedians. Like I'd been at Second City and stuff, and you get 2 weeks and you're in there and you sink or swim. You either get something on and you probably get hired again, or you don't and you don't. And like with Baroness, we had people in who had never ever written for TV before, who were in even briefly for 3 days as a story editor, or a week here, a week there, and I'd learned that from 22, how important it is to bring people in. So find out which rooms take chances on people for like a couple of days, and you never know if you've got some samples, or that having a connection, find out who's in that room. Oh man, it's tough. It is tough even, but
there's also the Toronto Screenwriters Conference, I think, has Telefilm New Voices, and I feel like the guy who got that last year ended up in Kurt Sweeten's room.
Okay.
I think he had a mentor. Like I think he was like applied for, it's like a writing thing, but then they pair you with the writing mentor, and then then your mentor might have a job or might have a show to get you in. So that's like any, like even like a mentoring contest, anything like that. Meet somebody who could then like help you. I'm sorry, I wish I could be more helpful, but it's like I had done that chorus program and gone to bed and then gotten placed in a room because of I think it was a 2-week paid internship that they had. I don't know.
I believe Telefilm has a few programs as well, and even CFC. You were a writer on that program as well
at the CFC.
Yeah, I think there's a Canadian Film Center as well. They have a few options, I believe, for writers.
I mean, yes, and also I will say I did volunteer at the CFC because they have director, editor, like they have all these programs, and so they have shorts. They're doing shorts all the time. So I volunteered for them before I ever went there, because I knew it would be a good opportunity to like meet people. And like one of the people that I met from doing that volunteer job, basically now like is like the director of development at CBC or something like insane, Jennifer Shin. It's just like this insane situation. You really like never know.
Speaking of mentors and mentees, Lindsay says, Dear Marsha, Carolyn, and Donna, are you hiring or looking for mentees yourselves? Because I'm great at making coffee, but for real, you're all so inspiring. Carolyn, as a fellow actor that loves to act, but also wants to get more creatively involved, did you find it difficult to make that shift into behind the scenes while also still wanting to play/perform?
Yeah, I was kind of forced off. Like I was at Second City. I loved it. It was great. I did my time. I'm not forced, but SARS, remember SARS? Yeah. That first thing that happened back in 2003. Yeah.
It's like we were, that was a thing. SARS.
Yeah. Good old SARS. Well, SARS hit us when I think I was just about to leave Second City. And at that time, if you were at Second City, you get any job, you kind of got booked on a not any show, but it was sort of easier to get work. And then SARS came and it hit Toronto really hard, as I remember it. And it seemed like all the shows sort of disappeared. They went elsewhere. They didn't want to shoot in Toronto because it was such an unknown and around this virus. And so I remember I didn't really have much work. So I thought I'd be going into all this other performance. And my memory was, it was just there wasn't as much work as I thought there'd be. And so I did the odd show, but a lot of stuff had left town. And so when I wrote for 22 minutes, I was kind of desperate. Like I needed a job. And so I submitted a sample and got that job, got into the room. So I was forced behind the scenes. I'd never done that. I was always on stage or writing my own material at Second City or with other people and getting on stage. So that was a real lesson in humility, because now you're writing, you're used to being the one, people are, in best case laughing at, or other times falling flat on your face, but your face is there. And so that was, if you do work behind the scenes, it was super valuable, because you understand you've removed yourself from it. You're now writing for someone else, their sensibility, their talents, watching them. And that was a great watch and learn opportunity. So by the time I was ready to go in front of the camera again, now I knew how to write my own material. I knew how to write for other people. I understood that. So it's valuable to have both, like be in front, then go behind, learn how that works. And then when you're ready to make your next move, you've got some more skills. Does that answer your question?
I think it did. I feel like it did.
Sort of.
Kimberly Campbell says, hi everyone, I was wondering about your work hours and work life in the industry for yourselves. How is the balance between work and your personal lives, keeping up with your other interests and maintaining a healthy lifestyle in such a demanding industry? So I think that's a good question. How did you all deal with the heavy workload and the work environment, the intense work environment, and are there any tips and advice?
Wow.
Someone?
Donna's gonna have all the advice you need.
Was that? No. No. If you're on set, if you have a job that you're on set shooting and stuff, obviously, your hours are insane. Although it's gotten better in the last few years. We don't seem to be doing, such crazy hours. And certainly now with COVID, the days are much shorter. It's a tricky thing. It's a really tricky thing, because it's not a 9-to-5 situation. So if you have children, it's a challenge. I have a son, and when he was young, it was like, trying to find childcare for him was like, your day starts at 5 a.m. and I need you to stay till 11 p.m. from Monday to Friday. Is that okay? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, so, I was really fortunate, because my husband was also in the business. And so we used to trade off, and he would do a show, I would do a show. So somebody would always be home with our son, but it's like, it certainly was not easy. There was no stability or anything. Yeah, you just need to, I guess you need to find what works. My family's in Montreal, and my mom and dad would, there was once where we had a 3-week overlap, and my son was 2 or 3 at the time. And my parents had come to take care of him. And I came home, and we had given my parents our bedroom, and we were upstairs on the 3rd floor and whatever. And I came home at 3:30 in the morning from work one day to find my little boy sitting on the couch, wide awake, staring at his dad, who was asleep. And I thought, oh my God, I'm like damaging my child.
I've broken him.
Yeah, I really, and that was like, okay, But you find you figure it out. You figure it out. Yeah. You enjoy your off time. You enjoy the unemployed time.
That's it. I feel like that's the thing. It's so hard because when you're unemployed, for so much of the time of when you're unemployed, you're trying so hard to get a job.
That's
so
right.
Now, when you're unemployed, like you don't know how to enjoy it, and you're just like you automatically like it's like the anxiety like immediately rises. Like, what am I going to do? But it's like really important to like try and take that time.
Mhm.
And I also will just say that I'm like one of those people who like discovered in the pandemic that I had no hobbies. And I was like, oh, and then now you can see that's like I got all these plants and I'm like playing the ukulele. I'm like just trying. It actually has like turned out to be really good because it is like a way to like de-stress where I just like kind of allowed myself to be in work mode all the time. Like, like I like will be working and then I'll go to the bathroom and I'll come back from the bathroom and I'll be like, I had a great idea, which does happen. But I'm like, also I could just take a bathroom break and not be thinking about the show, like, so I really actually try and force myself to like do things to really take, I started dancing actually.
Great.
I started dancing. It was like, during that dance class, it's like, you're trying to learn the moves. You cannot think about anything else except trying to get this routine down. And that's how I would like just get out of my head and be able to like kind of fully relax. So that's just definitely something in terms of like the balance. As Donna's saying, like when you're on set, you just are, the balance is you go to work and you sleep. I mean, that's basically your life. So you don't have to worry about it. But then it's those other times when you're developing something, maybe you're working on something else that you should try and find the time and not work all day, like every day when you don't have to, I would say.
And it's really, that's a really important point. I actually just had a conversation with my agent just the other day, and I was telling her, like, I'm feeling guilty about my days off, and it's beautiful and sunny and I want to be able to enjoy the day, but I feel like I should be doing something, and I can't just, sit and it's like you constantly always feel like, and I think that's a really important point, Marsha, to like, yeah. And during the pandemic though, I thought if I see one more post about sourdough bread, I'm going to freak out. I was like, I did not bake during the lockdown no.
I just learned to kill my plants. That's about it. Carly says, when is the right time to get an agent? I'm a bit confused about what agents do.
Oh. I think it's different for everyone. When I started directing, I actually couldn't get an agent, and I had a couple of meetings with agents and they were disastrous. And I came away just weeping, and thought, I'm going to be getting my first couple of jobs on my own anyway. And basically just emailed, called every single producer I met over the years. And just like everybody I knew, it was like, I just, put myself out there. And then I finally reached a point where I was like, okay, I need to be a little more serious, and I need to find an agent. And then, I have the best agent in the world. So yeah, I think it's different for everyone. I think it's a really individual kind of thing.
It can be so hard. Like I laugh, like I go like, oh, that's like, I'd say, I mean, one thing, if you can kind of what Donna was saying, if that first job you can get on your own, which has come through one of your contacts, or you got in a room. I remember, I think I got my writing agent. It was because I was working on 22 or on the hour or something like that. And suddenly I had something, right? I had something to offer. So it's like, you kind of come with this thing and they're going to negotiate that contract. And yeah, they're going to take their 10% if it's writing, directing, or 15 if it's acting. But let's say it would probably be a writing or job at that stage. Potentially, if you're coming to them with something, that's a cool offering. And that's also a test. It's like, okay, are they excited by your work? Are they excited by this job? Are they excited to negotiate, that contract for you? But I think it's hard to get, I don't know if you can get it. Can you get a writing agent without a job first? I don't know how that, I had to have a job before I got one. So that's
you can. I agree with you. I think the job helps.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna make it much more. I think it's like the reality I would say here in this country is that there are a lot of writers and not a lot of jobs, unfortunately. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But so it's like, so if an agent is going to take you on at this point, it has to be like, I think they're thinking more about how they can work for you. Like they don't want to like say, oh, you can be my client and then do nothing for you.
Mhm.
You know, they want to know. So if you had like a great project, for example, that they were like, oh, we could totally sell, we could pitch this. Then
Yeah.
that would be a reason why they take you on. Or if you have a job, then it's like, okay, yeah, I'll help you negotiate this contract and then I'll represent you. And they know that they can leverage the job you've already had to get you other jobs.
Yeah.
So there isn't really a point in which I think before you're like, right, before you're in the industry, it's like, I was like, should I get an agent? But the truth is you kind of don't need the agent that much until you have a job.
Yeah.
Until you need it, and then until you start to like encounter situations where you're like, I don't want to have this conversation.
Yeah.
I know.
Happy to pay somebody to have that conversation.
Yeah.
I like so regret that I'm like, you know, I'm the kind of person who like builds personal relationships, and then that means I always have to talk to people. And I was like, oh, why wasn't I the kind of person who just sent everybody to my agent, and then they just get to deal with it? But I would say the project thing would also be like, if you have a project that you think is really strong and you can see where it can fit in the market and you like understand that. I mean, it's obviously if the agent agreed, then they could set up the meetings. It might be hard for you as like a person outside of the industry to be like, I'm going to pitch this to all these people. But to be honest, there actually are a lot of pitching competitions. So you still might not need the agent, but you could always try. If they love it, they think they can sell it, they'll take your money.
And that's a fair exchange. Like you sort of go, well, I got this job. Well, yeah, but they're going to do so much work for you down there, like negotiating contracts, helping you, you know, shape your career. Who knows what, depending how hands-on or hands-off they are. But yeah, you kind of need something to go to them with, whether it could be a job, but that's a great point, Marsha. Like, do you have a project that you've got a pitch deck, you've got a whole little situation and they're like, oh, this looks good. But you kind of have to come with something more than just like, I want to be in the biz, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And lastly, to round off, one final question is, what is something you wish you'd known before you entered the industry? I'm going to pick on someone again. Marsha?
I mean, I feel like the two things that come to mind are two things that I already talked about. One being like, the hobbies thing. I'll just explain it a little bit more clearly, which was that because for so much of my life, writing was my hobby. It was like I did this other thing, and then writing was the thing I did in all my spare time. So when it became my job in my life, I realized I didn't have anything else. And so it's more like I just realized the importance of having other things. Like if people want like work balance, you need other things. You need people, you need to have a family, you need to have a partner, children, hobbies, friends, like you need something, because otherwise you'll just work all the time, partially because you love it so much. Like you love it so much and it fills you in so many ways. So I just think, and then the other thing, I think what I wish, it's like, I don't know. I think that being a showrunner is great. But I think in a way, when you're a writer, it just feels like that's the natural like end point or goal. And now I remember being on a panel with somebody who was like, yeah, I never want to be a showrunner. Oh, it was a writer from Schitt's Creek, actually, Winter.
Oh, I know Winter.
She's like, it seems terrible. It's like the funnest part is being in the room, writing scripts and doing this part. Everything else seems, and I was like, what is she talking about?
Yeah.
Like, and then I'm like, oh God, yeah. Like, I mean, it's a good point. But I think it's like, I guess it's like, yeah, like what I wish I understood was that I think it really suits some people. And to be honest, I think it probably, like, I probably will always want to do it. But I think I just felt like that was the goal to have. And it's not the only goal to have as a writer. It's not the only thing to do. You can be a writer in a room, and that's incredible. It is the best part. So if you just get to do that, it's like you won. It doesn't make, it's not like, oh, you didn't rise the ranks to this, and that's like, that could be just fine, because it is great. So I wish I kind of had more perspective on it, so I could just have like enjoyed all the stages and not be thinking so much about the goal of doing my own thing and having my own show, because I think there's a lot of value to the other parts as well.
Carolyn?
I think, yeah, I love all of that. I love what you're saying. And I also want to add to the conversation that what really benefited me was the unknown. Like I look and I go, God, if I actually knew what it took to do, to showrun, I'm like, oh, geez, like, you know, like how hard something's going to be, or how you're statistically the chances that you're going to get your show greenlit, or statistically the chances that you're going to get on main stage at, you know, Second City, or whatever the accomplishment or the goal or the thing was, I might have been like, there's no way I'll have a chance. And so you might, if you know too much, I think there was something I just didn't know. I was like, oh, I'm going to quit my day job and make $85 a week at Second City Tour Co., which was no guarantee of going to main stage. Like, but you don't know any better. And so you think it's possible because you're young and idealistic or hardworking or whatever, lucky and talented or whatever, you're hopefully a combination of, you know, a bunch of those things. But sometimes it's good not knowing, because if you actually knew the odds of success in any of the things, you might not, if I'd known too much, I might have said, it's not going to happen, you know? So embrace what you don't know and just charge forward, like the Fool card in the tarot, you know, just move forward and the path will present itself. I know that sounds, again, pretty woo.
So true.
It's a good point. It's a very good point you make.
Yeah. The first time I learned how many working writers there were in Canada, like I went to like a guild event and I found out how many working writers there were in Canada. I was like, thank God I never knew this information before I was a working writer.
Yeah.
God, sorry, I cut you off, but I'm like, that is good advice, guys. Don't look into it.
I agree. It's like if you know what there is to learn, it's like it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like no, you know, there's a lot. So that's a great point, Carolyn.
Yeah.
I second that notion.
Donna, is there something you'd wish you'd known though, when you started 20 years before, even with script writing?
Yeah, no, I mean, my only, now looking back, what I wish I would have done, I wish I would have like taken the chance sooner. You know, I was always feeling like, no, not yet. No, I'm not going to do it yet. I'm not ready. I don't know enough yet. And then finally it was like, I am never going to know enough. You are constantly learning. And even now that I'm directing, you know, I have a lot of friends in the industry, and I'm still, one of my really good friends is a focus puller. And I had a question just a couple of weeks ago. I was like, I need to know about this lens, blah, 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 you know, and I'm pretty technically savvy because of my script supervising career. I know a lot about the, you know, the nuts and bolts of actual filmmaking, but still, you know, I'm still constantly learning. Yeah. And yeah, had I known what was ahead of me, I probably wouldn't have, yeah.
No, that's very good advice. And you bring up important points, the three of you, about what you would have known and what you probably should not know. But that's why we are here today, to share with everyone listening, to who want to get their foot in the door. And we've made some pretty important conversations and talked about some good points. And I hope that that's helped people. But Marsha, Carolyn, and Donna, this is a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on this panel. I'm going to hand it over to Irina, who has some announcements to make.
Yes, thanks so much, Marriska. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask Marriska a question, because she's been asking so many great questions. An amazing job really hosting this event. What is something you wish you knew when you entered the industry from a media perspective and a press perspective? I would love to hear from you as well.
Can I just steal your answers and say I wish I didn't know anything? I actually did not know anything when I was starting out. I was a naive 20-year-old I just knew what gave me the butterflies, you know, the adrenaline rush, whether it is talking to filmmakers, actors, because we all have this passion for movies. Or even when I published my first review, I just knew what that feeling was and I went after it. But I guess I would say I wish I went after and sought mentors in the industry, because I never did that. I should have done more networking and learned the ins and outs rather than trial and error. Probably I would have had mentors, probably would have been able to help, but I'm sure that now there are a lot more programs though that offer mentorship, but yeah. And then is the things I do not want to know what they said.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I know I went a bit over time, but thank you so much for your time, Mariska, Donna, Marsha, and Carolyn, for all your advice and your insight. Before we do finish off and I say goodbye.